You have a minute. What are you building?
We're a personalized discovery platform for emerging designers globally.
My startup is called ULimo. It's like Uber for limousines and party buses.
This seems too obvious.
We use AI to generate personalized learning experiences.
Someone's got to send someone money.
It's such a big promise without specifics.
I'm winging it though.
Round of applause. So many of your conclusions just become stronger as your pitch goes on.
We're democratizing limo and party bus service.
Nobody wants a limo every week.
It's invaluable. It's how we can actually tailor the entire shopping experience.
Someone somewhere is going to come along and change how people learn. Now the big question is it going to be this person sitting right here, right now?
First founder up. Well, round of applause. All right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. What's your name?
My name's Katrina Yuknevichuta.
Awesome. Katrina, are you ready to give us your minute pitch, get some feedback?
I am absolutely ready. Let's get this thing going.
Let's get it going. You have a minute. What are you building?
Awesome. So for people who love fashion and work really intense jobs, it's really difficult to find emerging designers. And you go on a Revolve or Essence and have to scroll through thousands of SKUs, look at products that aren't tailored to you. And so we built Arête. Arete. We're live in the App Store. We're a personalized discovery platform for emerging designers globally. And we leverage novel machine learning techniques to generate recommendations of those items based on individual preferences as well as trending aesthetics. We essentially take our technology and leverage it to connect these amazing designers with the shoppers who would want their products but wouldn't discover them by searching on Google. And best part is you can instantly shop everything. So that's what we're building. You should check us out.
Under
Awesome.
a minute. Well,
Under a minute. Perfect.
Yeah.
I have some questions first, and
I'm gonna let you go first because you are more fashionable than I am.
thank
So you're more target audience. She's looking at me. She's like, oh god, this guy's never gonna be a customer.
Hey, you guys are matching hats, so
there we go. Exactly. Thanks for noticing.
on the same page.
Well, and so it's interesting because I do dabble in terms of I think people have sometimes given me the criticism too if you dabble too far in terms of trying to wear something interesting and maybe go beyond the boundaries. So I find this fascinating. Who is your customer really? So I say that because at some point you said for design, it's an app for emerging designers, but then your matchmaking is clear. There's a consumer buyer who's downloaded, I think, you know, Arête. By the way, kudos on spelling it. Whenever anyone has a startup name that is going to be hard to spell it right after you say it. That's just your obligation. So
exactly, acquisition.
So which of those two people do you serve? One always wins over the other. When you think about who your true customer is in terms of what you're going to build in the future, who you're catering to, core user experience, which one is more important?
Well, so our mission is connected to these emerging brands, right? Like our entire company mission is to say, let's make the best shopping experience where you find the best products out there. And for us, we're very connected to these designers. We have about 50 partners that we're signed contracts with right now. And they're from all over the world. There are these amazing brands that use, beautiful materials and dead stock and have amazing creative vision, but they just don't have the ability to actually get out there into new markets or to actually leverage technology.
So I'm going to give you some pitch feedback. As an investor, I think especially as a startup nerd type of a person in general, I keep noticing when you are still bringing up the consumer as the core person. So for example, you said you're building a shopping experience. As you're saying the brands are, because I think I've gotten your actual answer. So this is mostly about giving you the feedback for the future of because
it does seem like the shopper is actually, if I get to the economics of it, it's irrelevant. It's you're selling a product for a brand, and that whatever that brand is happens to be an emerging designer. They happen to sell to a shopper, and that matters.
Unless this is where I do want to clarify. Can boring brands also sell on your marketplace?
No, we're very exclusive about the brands we accept.
This is where you do have to be that specific. Because if you said yes to that, I would have said, okay, fine. Fancy brands are actually just your go-to-market. That's where you're going to try to have a beachhead, but you'll let anybody on. But if you're going to be specifically about these folks, make sure that you're almost always talking from their perspective in your pitch, so that as an investor, I get your focus. Because if it's both, I go, oh, I can't quite tell what you're building.
Can I just piggyback on that real quick, and then I'll shut up. Just because I think it's good, just general feedback is this is a marketplace play. If I put everyone in a
It's
box.
a two-sided market.
Yeah, two-sided marketplace. And I think the hardest thing with two-sided marketplace, because I made fun of Eventbrite earlier, I love Eventbrite, two-sided marketplace, but they had to make a decision. Is it the event creator or the event goer? They can't be, I wanted them to be event goer, attendee based so bad. And I think Luma did a really good job of like, it's about the attendee experience. But Eventbrite said, no, we're a creator. It's all about the creator. I think at some point, even if it's 51, 49%, you gotta pick. And I think as a founder of a marketplace, you've got to decide who is your real customer in this marketplace. And I think that's kind of what we were getting to. And I'd love, for you to, from a pitch perspective, lean in on that and then like double down on it and then make it like, I don't know, 75-25 in terms of how you talk about it.
And by the way, not in front of customers or the public, right? This is as part of a pitch. You got to decide when you're a marketplace in the world, you're for everybody. So then my next question, why an app versus just making this a storefront, like a web experience that people...
I mean, we've done a lot of market research, right? Like 10-page reports worth. And when you're looking at trends in e-commerce, you're seeing mobile first. Obviously, secondhand is big, but also individualism is on the rise. So people are looking for more unique products. Obviously, thrifting is big. Social shopping is also becoming big. So you're starting to see a lot of behavioral shifts in the consumer that are tied to a mobile first product. Now, that doesn't mean that when you're talking about emerging brands, the price point is higher and people are still more comfortable making larger purchases on web. And so there is a web version in our future, but we are mobile first very intentionally with the idea of preempting the changes in the market.
I do think my personal opinion here, and I think your mileage will vary. I think you need a better reason.
Yeah.
It could be you say something like the shareability stuff, the personalization is better if you're in a
that's a given. Yeah.
Got it.
Absolutely.
Well, and sometimes, right? Because you could like Pinterest just based off of like collaborative filtering and what people click on can personalize to you. But you might say it's much easier to upload a photo from our application because that's part of the personalization.
Yeah.
So that might be where you might want to educate me on kind of the
Totally.
application.
Yeah. That implicit and explicit feedback that our users give us with their engagement, it's invaluable. It's how we can actually tailor the entire shopping experience.
Talk more about that as part of the pitch too. And then, talking about from a product perspective now, obviously the big part of this is getting those brands on board. And you're telling a story where they want to find these customers more often, just out of a curiosity and extending the conversation perspective, not a feedback perspective. What's your method of initially acquiring that customer with these brands, right? You have the asset of,
when you say customer, you mean shopper.
The shopper, right? Because I think that's the value you provide to the brand is like, you're going to say, I have a bunch of shoppers, I have data on them, and you're going to get recommended to them if you like collaborate with
this
me.
is my sub question to this, is where I was getting, why I kind of was, who's the target? Because if your focus was the emerging designer, if you were only able to get designers that made clothing for women, your user base would predominantly be women. And if you got one that only made it for toddlers, it'd be parents of toddlers, right? So, but if you had an app of parents, then that would control who your designers were and your design. So I don't know which one controls which, right? Because the way you were phrasing your question kind of implied that you have a user base and then your emerging designers are like really love your user base. But that means that would influence who your designers were. And I don't know which one is leading here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for us, we have a very clear brand identity. Our users, if we're talking on the demand side, they are fashion lovers. And that's why I always start with that. They're people who are stylists, they're micro-influencers, they are in the know with what's happening in fashion. They want to discover the next big thing in fashion, right? And there is a very clear correlation between emerging brands and the people who are in the know about what's coming next. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but it is a very connected line basically between the brands that we target and those people who are actually interested in purchasing from those brands.
That user, what do they predominantly do? Because I would think that kind of user it'd be like discovery would almost be more important than purchase. Purchase would be like, oh, every now and then, because I'd be agnostic if I could wear the clothes or not. I just want to experience what's new and what's happening and trends in the industry. And then every now and then be like, oh, that would look good on me. I will also purchase.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because we've kind of gamified the experience. And obviously in 1 minute, I don't have time to share everything. But if you go into the app, you'll see that as you engage, you can actually save products. You can play around. I don't know if anyone remembers Polyvore, but every fashion girl and guy loved polyvore back in the day. And we've kind of brought back some of those elements, and it's been really exciting for our users. So yes, it's discovery first, which is how we start, but that shopping experience is really critical, and we lean into reinforcement. So as you engage on the platform, creating different looks and saving them to your, to your phone, essentially, to your app, to Arête, you can actually come back and purchase those. And there's a reinforcement mechanism. You can see what other people are creating. So there is a social element to it that kind of allows for this ecosystem to come full circle.
Yeah, so one thing I would love to get into more, and again, I know you can't do it in a minute, but as I think about the bigger, broader pitch, as you take this to more investors, is I want to know, so at the end of the day, I get how you'll monetize. You'll take a percentage of sales, I would assume. But it seems like the ecosystem you've built, there will be a lot of discovery, and there'll be social elements around the discovery, and then a percentage of those discoverers will become purchasers. And so it seems like if I want to increase more revenue in your current model, what I would need to do is increase more people doing more discoveries more often. So then it seems like, okay, from a product perspective, I'm all in on discovery. I'm almost like not even thinking about sales and conversion there, because
like Pinterest versus Etsy.
Yeah, right. Etsy, like you go to buy. Pinterest, you go to discover, and then you might buy or might link off to an Etsy. But that gets me thinking, like, what's most important here? Like, okay, this is a discovery app, and maybe a gamification on discovery. Less so than like the shopping part is kind of, to me, especially because I'm thinking like early stage, it's moot, right? If you're like Series A, Series B, it's revenue all day long. But right now it's like, no, I just want so many freaking users doing so much freaking discovery, and we'll monetize them later.
Totally.
The transaction primarily being like save to profile or purchase.
Yeah, and that KPI can change, right? Right now, if you're talking about discovery, you're talking more about acquisition, which is very aligned with how we're thinking about it, because you also, when you're a new designer, you have to be able to build trust with your shopper. It's not an easy process. We get targeted by Instagram ads all the time. Can we verify the quality of those products? Not really. So we have to be able to build that trust, and that takes some time, right? So as you scale and grow, you can transition that KPI to revenue. But for us right now, it's about building out and capturing as much of that market with those fashion lovers in our ecosystem.
That's cool.
Why not add brands who you don't have as commerce partners so that there's more to discover, even though they can't
Scraping.
purchase?
Yeah, scraping data. Yeah, so it's funny, when we first started, it's not like we had 50 partners. So we started with scraping some brands, and they were brands that we then were able to come to and say, hey, we've been generating this much excitement to your brand, right? Here are some of the views, here are the impressions. Let's talk about a partnership. Not saying it was 100% successful, but I'm saying that that's the strategy that has been effective, and we're continuing with it.
I think you need to tell this as part of your story, because until this point, I'm thinking, because I asked you that question of like, will you let any brand on? And you said no to that. The other conclusions I assumed were like, oh, this is pretty locked in marketplace. But you're saying, actually, I'm pretty willing to have content be somewhat king here of like, it's a certain type of brand, but we'll let them in even before we know them. And we'll use that as a method to get to know them, to get people to save on the profile. So make that part of it, if that's true, because of his point of like discovery is the thing today, because that's what's going to lead to conversion. And tomorrow you can do more curation. But I think that gets me really excited about how much content you will offer to these discovery-focused users in the early days.
We'll just piggyback on that real fast, because it's kind of related. What I think, this is like feedback, and then also just at large to the audience. When we talk about marketplaces, marketplace dynamics, like this comes up all the time, right? One, who's the real customer? It's got to be somebody on supply side, demand side. But the other is, do you fill it with non-inventory, right? Because Eventbrite, bring them up again just because relevant here, made the decision, because event discovery, like what's the best thing to do in San Diego this weekend? It's most likely not something on Eventbrite, right? But so they thought, hey, should we have Padre games on here? Should we have the San Diego Zoo on here? Things we don't ticket, right? Because it would answer that question. It would help with SEO. It would help drive traffic. But it's a real big problem in marketplace dynamics of like, it will also hinder your sales and hinder your revenue and hinder your relationship with your brands, because more people will go to a Padres game or the zoo than they would the block party on North Park.
Yeah. And I think the good thing for us is like there are so many emerging designers out there in the world. And a lot of them, like we have partners in Venezuela, in Georgia, in Colombia, in Denmark. And a lot of these brands, especially today, I was talking to one of our partners in Colombia, they don't have Stripe in Colombia, right? And that's how we have been doing our payouts to this day. So for us, it's really exciting because we get to figure out how do we actually bring these global designers that have no access to the technology, can't really tap into these amazing markets in New York City. How do we actually bring them to the shoppers, to the consumers, and really serve their needs?
It's super cool connecting, where currently there's a lot of infrastructure blockage. Well done, thanks for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Marketplaces are super hard to communicate about. And I think that's the challenge, is also like, are you communicating to investors or to your audience directly? You have to decide how much can you hold both thoughts in your head at once, or also in the listener's head at the same time.
Yeah, well, and then, just for the founders in the audience, for her, and even the gentleman that pitched the fintech, I think you'll find with some of these verticals, investors will everyone's going to put you in a box. But sometimes they're gonna be like, oh, you know what? I loved your pitch, but you should talk to my buddy at Defy VC who does marketplaces.
Right.
Prop tech is probably the biggest one. As soon as I can tell you're prop tech, I'm out. You should talk to my buddy, Raj in Georgia who does prop tech.
Right.
It's like, oh man, you've lost them. You'll get this often with fintech. Fintech's like everything's a fintech and everything's AI, so everyone kind of plays there. But oftentimes you'll get, hey, you shouldn't talk to me, you should be talking to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so that can be frustrating. But what's, I think, good for her, because it seems like she knows her stuff really well, is that when you do get in front of a marketplace dynamics person, like it's just going to be strategy.
Yeah.
And it sounds like every time we asked her a question, she knew the right answer to tell, which I think.
And it seemed like from the consumer side and the supplier side, that was never a question that seems obvious or well told.
Yeah.
And so we were in the further part of that funnel of question asking.
Yeah, but I do like this, like, who is your actual customer, right? And then how are you actually going to get to revenue? And then there are different narratives between the early days and then when you're high growth, high revenue.
Totally. So welcome the next one up.
Let's do it.
All right, next founder up, round of applause. Hey there.
How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, I'm John.
John, nice to meet you. Pleasure to meet you.
How you doing? Nice
John,
to
are
meet
you ready to tell us what you're building, get some feedback?
Yes, for sure.
You have a minute, what are you building?
All right, so my startup is called ULimo. It's like Uber for limousines and party buses. So basically, we've developed the first rideshare app where college students can share the party bus ride with other college students. So we're democratizing limo and party bus service. I don't know if you've ever tried to rent a limousine or a party bus, but it's quite a pain in the ass. You have to call the local companies often. It's basically like the airline industry before Expedia. So like I said, the rideshare technology is out there, and there's tons of limo companies out there. And frankly, oftentimes they're just sitting there collecting dust, because when do you use a limo? Typically only once in your life, right? For like a wedding or a special event. But users are now going from using a limo or a bus just once in their life to every week, because you can share the party bus ride for as little as $10 per person. So, imagine if you're a new freshman at a university, you don't know anyone yet, you can be one person and share a ULimo bus with other college students.
That's about a minute.
Cool.
I just love how we've come full circle, because when Uber first launches, right, it's black card, not limo.
Yeah.
But it's and then not many people take black card Ubers anymore. I don't even think it's an option. It's just VIP. But I like that we've come full circle. But yeah, I know the space you're talking about. I've seen Uber's kind of getting into charter buses, which I know is not a party bus, but I'm thinking tangentially the market's there. What I don't know, and you kind of alluded to, hey, there's a market where you took it once in your life and now they're taking it every week. That's one where, my VC, I want to call bullshit, right? And I want to know, show me some data on that. But hey, it's enough of a number that you bought yourself 5 more minutes to tell me that it's not bullshit. But I was like, there's no way. Nobody wants a limo every week.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because that's exactly what, investors told Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb, right? They said, people will never pay to stay in other people's homes. Yeah. So, we get the same kind of problem. Why? Because we are inventing a new market. Many startups and many founders just innovate on an existing market, but only, a very small number of startups and founders actually invent a new market.
Are there people who are taking a party bus every week?
Of course, we've proven out close to $500,000 in revenue.
So answer that way. don't answer in the abstract of like what Airbnb did. So, because for a second it was like a cringy answer of like,
Sure.
oh, no one likes to hear the founder say, well, Brian Chesky proved it. It's like, well, he proved it, right? So if you have that evidence, let's talk in the evidence. So people are, basically turning into a more weekly habit than a.
Oh yeah, you got to check out our Instagram. There's pictures and videos of just college students, lines wrapped around the block. Why? Because this is the problem. This is how I started the company. You ever have a big group of friends and you have to split up into multiple Ubers? It sucks, right? So now college students, you no longer have to split up into multiple Ubers. You can all travel together safely and affordably.
So again, I'd have a million questions because I would think like logistically, the odds of this kind of inventory being ready on the fly would be unlikely. So hey, we get into 6 Ubers and they'll be here within the next 6 minutes, or we got to wait 45 minutes to go on. Like, let's just split up because time is of the essence in this particular. But I assume on this kind of thing, you plan ahead, you schedule it, you know that it's going to come. It's not as spontaneous.
We roll the dice.
Okay.
So we pre-rent the party buses. And it's funny, what we've proven out is, when we fill up to max capacity, we're actually making more than the limo contractors that we're contracting from. We get about a 65 to 70% profit margin. So I think Uber has typically a 30% profit margin on each ride. We're more than double that.
I will say N equals 1, little life hack for anybody that goes to Vegas. When you come out and you see the taxi line and there's the Uber queue, there's a bunch of limousines sitting there. You just walk up to the dude and offer him like $65. He'll take you wherever you want because he's got nothing to do for 3 hours. And so that's like I take a limo anywhere I go in Vegas, not because I'm baller, just because like it's actually cheaper than the taxi.
Well, it's the supply demand thing. And that's like where maybe a lot more of your story could be, both like on there's too much supply that's dormant. Here's the limo and charter bus and party bus problem. And then on the demand side, you'd be surprised how the price is pretty close to what you're already doing behavior-wise with an Uber. But now, because of what we enable, you get this added experience for the same cost. Telling that story way more practically, because when you tell it from we should all want to do this and it's more fun and here's what college students want to do, that to me, I go, okay, maybe, and I want to hear those details. But when you tell this other side, where it's like, oh, you're talking about that supply-demand equation, then I can imagine you creating that market. Because essentially what you're saying is, actually, this stuff would be a lot more popular if the way to book it today wasn't to like call a random small business, which feels like how I would have to do it. We're making it different. That brings the cost way closer to this other behavior that already exists. XYZ, 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 right? And like then you'd get into, and it exists in every town, in every city, and it exists in this way, and here's how easy it is to get supply. So again, I think in your case, because the problem itself or the market or how interesting and visualizable it is so easy, that's your first 10 seconds, 15 seconds, knock out like, here's what it is, here's what it looks like, here's what it feels like. The rest is, here's the marketplace dynamics that we're actually taking advantage of.
Yeah, and speaking of marketplace dynamics, so it's a bit more than transportation, right? It's actually an end-to-end experience because we partner with nightclubs, bars, and you can purchase your admission ticket to a nightclub in the same screen that you can purchase the party bus service. So it's, like I said, a complete package deal, end-to-end experience. That's why our tagline is ULimo, the future of nightlife.
No, I do like that from a monetization perspective. Again, from my younger days, something I understood about the economics of limousines is they'll often take you to a strip club for free because they just want to get a bunch of people there, right? But it makes me think like, where else would somebody on the other side, the receiver of humans, want to cover the cost or offset the cost to make sure that an exorbitant number of people ended up there? Like that's interesting and compelling, because it would be really cool if you offset the cost and it became like just dirt cheap. It's like, why would you not take again, when I'm in Vegas, why not take a limo if it's cheaper than a taxi?
Yeah, it's like the greatest nightclub promoter in your pocket.
I'm thinking for a reason.
All right, well, he's thinking, so some of the things, I did like some percentage of this to be, tell me that there's a market here. If you can give me any sense of how large that market is, especially I think it's just for me to start mentally, like in the US, because I'm not sure, like, should I be thinking Vegas? And that's a hard market to break into for a lot of reasons with this kind of thing. But I think Uber still struggles there. But, is this college campuses? Is this, near the biggest wedding venue? Like you really got, is this near tourist centrals? Like, is this like Grand Canyon kind of thing? I think you have to put my head in place, because I think a lot of people are going to maybe struggle with where this resonates best.
Course.
And then, and I do think you might have, my instinct is you'd have a little bit of like naysayers, like, oh, there's nothing here. Like, this is a very small group. And so I loved when you dropped the $500,000 ARR. It's like, oh, okay. like he's not full of shit. So like you bought 5 more minutes again, right? You got me.
We've proven out, multiple test pilots, achieved a very interesting profit margin. So yeah.
I guess what I was thinking about is like, I don't love the moments other than when you're storytelling where you go to things like a nightclub promoter in your pocket or things like that, because that's not about the business side of things where it's like, oh, this is a smart arbitrage on existing supply and demand, and therefore he's going to get people who don't even do it today. And like, maybe it's about business meetings too, or maybe it's about taking, my team out to dinner and things like that. And as soon as you start to introduce opinionated language like that, it's kind of like an earlier pitch from last episode. An earlier pitch said something around like publishing and paywalls in publishing, and the only thing we could think about is publishing, but actually it was about micropayments for anything online. But we were so distracted by the fact that the use case was publishing. In this case, when you say things like nightclub and college students, you can talk about that in the portion where you're talking about your initial go-to-market, but be careful not to infuse the pitch with too much of that, because then my objections are going to be about that versus about the mechanics, again, of the marketplace and the unit economics.
You're spot on. I've heard that before.
Because I am thinking a lot about like bachelorette parties, college kids. I'm just thinking like, oh man, the amount of vomit I have to clean up in this thing. Because it's a big problem for Uber. And like, now you're getting Uber drivers who just won't pick you up if they think that you're drunk. And before, like that used to be the value prop, like no more drunk driving. Now it's like, no, if you're drunk, don't take an Uber. It's like, oh, how did that happen? And a lot of these problems. That same founder that he referenced from the previous episode, one thing that I thought was really interesting is that we talked about that I think you could do as well is, let's get in front of the fact that like there's a pre-existing market using a distressed asset in a similar way, Uber, Lyft, right? Not the same asset you're talking about, but very similar construct, right? You could even say City Bike, not that they're distressed, but just tell me right off the gate, hey, did you know that Uber and Lyft are leaving like $6.5 billion on the table in market cap? I was like, that sounds like you're crazy. Like, how is that possible? Because like the other founder was like, just tell me that, hey, Stripe can't win here in fintech, and here's why. Like, that's impossible, right? It's like, no, like I want to believe that that new CEO of Uber is like trying to monetize every penny he can, or he's not leaving anything on the table. And you found somewhere he is, and you've
Here are the reasons they're not going to approach us.
That's right. They cannot enter this market, and here's why. It's too big of a distraction, too far of a disconnect. It's like, oh, that's cool.
That's a great point. Yeah. Love that.
Good advice.
Well done. Thanks for sharing.
Alrighty.
Well done.
Thanks.
Feel like a celebrity. People tell me.
And now you are. What's your name?
I'm Soumya Gupta, founder and CTO of Context.
Awesome. Are you ready to give us your minute pitch and get some feedback?
Yes.
You have a minute. What are you building?
All right. So for that, can you understand me? Can you understand me? See, it's simple, right? But most online learning platforms do not ask you about it. Instead, they bombard you with pre-recorded lectures and expect you to understand them, due to which 90% of learners drop out. Hi, we're Context, and we use AI to generate personalized learning experiences that caters to each learner's goals, needs, and learning preferences. Initially, we're targeting learners transitioning into coding careers, specifically in JavaScript, which alone is a $390 million market. And our big vision is to tap into the online learning market, which is valued at $180 billion. We tested our beta with a class of 30 students at NYU, and we are releasing a beta to the general public. And expecting more signups from a wait list. So Context is not just any other online learning platform. Our mission is to revolutionize online learning by making it more personalized and accessible. Did you understand that? If not, visit contextlearn.com or meet me after this pitch.
Oh, almost a minute on the dot. Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will say, I don't know if I love the do you understand me, because it doesn't feel that related to the product. Mm-hmm. That's just my feedback. Right. So like, I get it, but at the same time, your product is so specifically something, kind of sturdy and related to learning that doesn't just have to do with, does an AI repeat at me? So maybe it's a style thing. What do you think?
No, yeah. At first I was like, yes. And then, where's this going?
Thing?
I was like, oh, it's cute. I see how you turned it around. But I would have said, generally speaking, like unnecessary. And especially with just when I'm thinking about like, how much time we have, like, capture every second. But you did a good job on time as well.
Yeah. I think in general, my challenge, we've even on the feedback loop stage heard a lot of AI-led learning, tutoring, teaching, education products. And I always wonder, it's kind of the two-sided thing, or two sequential things. One is, okay, this person already has a lot of, or will have a lot of competition in this space from the perspective of, and I say this not thinking that these are bad businesses, but if it's an AI wrapper, the second component can be, will the foundational models eat this startup alive if they get good enough at whatever you're trying to do? So maybe address both of those things. How is this different from other things in this space that are trying to do personalized learning using AI? And related, foundational models, if we listen to the whispers in the Twitterverse as an example, are going to get so good such that they will cannibalize a lot of the companies building on top of them.
Well, just to piggyback on that, like I think one of the examples I use in AI space is anyone who's using AI for language translation. I would have thought, 2 or 3 years ago, okay, like OpenAI is never going to master like language translation like a translator would do. So there's going to be a niche available. But now it's getting so freaking good that like I just think the base model is just going to do it, and there's not going to be any need for a niche carve out. Maybe there's like an app on top of OpenAI that like has some like features that you need if you're a professional translator. But it's things are getting disrupted there. So I think like ed tech, AI, like worried the same kind of thing's going to be there. Just piggybacking on what he said.
Right. And I totally agree. Firstly, it's a very crowded space. EdTech is a crowded space. AI, come on, don't get me started. So yeah, it is a crowded space.
Well, it's also important about like everybody gets put in a bucket. And I think what people are going to do is say, okay, I get that there's an AI play here, but you're an ed tech bucket. And it's going to be all about an ed tech conversation.
Yes, exactly. And so we've done a lot of market research, because we did realize, since the AI wave came up, a lot of the existing online learning platforms, and at the same time, people came up with their own tutor bots. Like you must have heard of Khanmigo, Khan Academy coming up with Khanmigo and all. But what we did realize when we did the research was that most of the competitors, they have more like AI tutors, or more like glorified chatbots that assist the teachers in terms of taking their classes, where essentially the students can ask doubts to that AI tutor. So it's more like an AI teaching assistant. We instead are trying to use the power of AI to create the entire learning journey. Like first we want to understand what the user is at. We ask them a lot of questions while onboarding them, like what level are they at, what are the learning goals, because when we did customer interviews, we asked them like what were some of the problems you found in online learning, and they said we wanted to do ABC, but we were taught something else. So with AI,
is this a specific,
yes.
I might have missed this in the pitch,
Yes.
is this a specific subject, or is this any?
JavaScript.
We are starting with that, yes, because eventually, yes, we'll be having a lot of courses, but we want to start somewhere because
I think, because one of the things that you're saying that appeals to me, I don't know if the fact that you're asking a lot of questions is what appeals, but the idea that there's an existing problem where individuals are going and not getting what they expect.
yes.
I'm not to like pretend I know your product, or like I was about to make a lot of assumptions, but if what you were going to say next was where we focus versus other solutions, including what a foundational model might attempt to do, is rather than just a chatbot or rather than just XYZ, we think in a multimodal way about how this person is going to approach a certain set of problems or a topic. Because then I go, okay, great, like even another, again, to your point, a glorified chatbot company, is thinking back and forth prompt response, versus you might be thinking nudge based. You might be thinking something that is about delivering tests to this person. You might be thinking a bunch of different things from a form factor standpoint. Is that where you're going with it?
Yes. So multiple things we are thinking, like the entire learning journey, right? We just don't want to be like there are a lot of Q&A chatbots or flashcard based AI flashcards. We are not just that. Firstly, like I said, onboard users, generate a personalized learning plan instead of having a fixed syllabi, because we focus on a couple of main problems. First was the fixed syllabi, which was not tailored to their learning expectations. That's one we're trying to solve, which we, by asking questions, understand what they want to learn. So the AI will generate a personalized, tailored learning path. Second problem which they faced was, some platforms, they provide practical learning, but instant feedback and support, because many people, when we ask, why do you drop out of a course or online learning course, and they said, not an active community forum, or they don't get instant support or feedback when they have doubts. So with AI, we'll be able to provide that and help them build projects. AI will give them exercises and projects to work on, and essentially one of our main goals is not just to provide certifications, rather generate a portfolio. AI will generate a portfolio of all the learnings they've done, where people can share their portfolio. Basically, it's a proof of work, the projects they've worked on. So it's like multiple things we are trying to hit on. It's the entire learning experience we're focused on, and not just generating Q&A or where people can clarify doubts. Yes, that is one factor where people can ask doubts, but it's the entire learning journey where we want to stick to, because we don't want people to just sign up to a platform but stay, learn, and eventually get value out of it.
So I think what's hard is that, ed tech's a big, complicated space, and we've got thousands of years of how to learn, and you want to come in and say, because there's a new technology, we're going to change how people learn. I think someone somewhere is going to come along and change how people learn. Now the big question is, like, one person in the next 100 years is going to do it. Is it going to be this person sitting right here, right now? The probabilities are low, right? So I'm immediately like, I don't know. I'd love it if prove us wrong and you're the next Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, right? The one in a million. But like, that's really hard undertaking, which are the greatest ones. But again, probability is super low that it's the person sitting right in front of me right now that got on the feedback loop. So that's tough. And then the other thing that I kind of think about with the little bit I do know about investing in the ed tech space is that, it sounds like the way you want to disrupt learning is it's less about like learning something new, and it's more about like learning a new like vocation. And I think there's a big difference between like learning like an academic subject, like just say like medieval history, and then like learning JavaScript. And it sounds like with the project-based everything, it's more about like a vocation. Like, hey, I want to walk away with a skill or a tool. And it seems like so this is more like disrupting like coding academies, but like doing it online and like having like a more like tailored, because I like the idea of like a tailored syllabus, but I'm already seeing AI create lessons plans for teachers and then customizing them based on small group classroom sizes. So we're already kind of seeing that happen. That's getting commoditized. But this idea that, you are going to give me a project to do and then give me an output and I'm going to have a portfolio of work afterwards that's, I think, different than online learning. I think the net result of that is I will have learned something.
Yes, eventually, yeah. Because one thing, yes, tailored learning journey is important. I think I've only come up with just one platform that's kind of close with does only in tailor. Yes.
Can I modify though, because I agree with what he said there, and I think the thing is, the learning journey is a very hard, as you're pointing out even in your pitch, sequential set of things. But if you said instead, we want to hit the learning journey, here's the first thing we think can really change with our particular approach. It's projects, let's say. And we're going to have projects, especially in the coding world, where like, you're not going to believe what we create in comparison to the exercises that a generic foundational model will build, because it's going to be multimodal in some fashion or whatever. And that's where we're going to start. And this is the first application of our theory that here's the change AI is going to make. And then we're going to go down learning journey. And here's the next segment, because what it allows us to feel that I don't feel from your pitch is like where the change begins. I know you want to change it all, right? So you're getting that across, but I don't have any sense of where that change begins beyond the fact it's you, it's AI, and you're passionate about it. But by targeting and saying, here's the first thing that's going to feel completely different than today, and here's a specific example of how it feels different, that then allows you to have the rest of the conversation.
Right.
I think there's a struggle right now of like, okay, to his point, fair enough if you're going to do it and you're going to change the world, but it's such a big promise without specifics.
This is one where I want to see proof. I just want to see, like, show me a learner that went through a boot camp, took 6 weeks, and then show me one that went through your platform in, half the time, fraction of the time, 6 days, right? It's like, oh, okay. And then I want like, an NPS on the other side, like, didn't find it was worth the value, the $6,000, like totally found it was worth the value. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. They're learning faster, they're having a better experience, and they found that it was more valuable. Like, just win all the way around.
Yes, exactly.
For the sake of time, we're gonna have to stop here, but thank you so much for sharing. Great job.
Thank you.
I didn't ask you first, but I want to put you on the spot.
Do I know JavaScript?
There's a seat.
Yeah.
You have a new startup.
Oh, I'm gonna pitch with 1 minute?
We can put a minute on the timer.
That's not fair because I didn't prepare, but I could wing it.
You want to wing it?
I'm winging it though.
You're winging it? Oh, round of applause. The man himself. Don't worry, we can use AI to modify it afterwards if we need to. Well, Marty, welcome to the stage.
It's gonna be tough, man. I have candidly not thought about how to do it in 1 minute.
I meant to email you this. I had this idea. I told my chief of staff about it, and then I completely forgot.
This is not fair at all.
Well, Marty,
I'm gonna go over the minute too, because most of my pitches are 30 minutes, so it's like I can do it in 28.
Well, if anyone wants to stay here for 28 minutes, but you have a sanctioned minute. Are you ready to tell everybody what you're building?
Yeah. So it's called, it's agree.com. And what we're doing is we're converging e-signature in money movement, because at the end of most signatures, someone's got to send someone money. And we all know the adage, the deal's not done until the wire hits, right? But if you look at the current players from DocuSign to PandaDocs to whatever it might be, they all stop right when you do the signature, but it's not done yet, right? Like, you owe me more money. And one of the unlocks that we've done is we've taken AI on top of OCR and we scan and parse. So we use the e-signature in the contract as a wedge, because we get all the data from the contract, right? And what's in the contract that we forget about? Payment terms. Who pays who, when they pay them, if it recurs, if it holds for something like escrow. So that means not only can we do the e-signature, but we can also create an invoice. We can also create a secure payment link. So we can do full end-to-end. We reduce human error in terms of having to create an invoice manually, and we reduce security vulnerabilities from things like man-in-the-middle attacks, where you guys are sending your wire information over plain text and email. Like, e-signatures are a commodity feature, invoice generation is a commodity feature, and I'm done.
Well done.
I knew I was near the end, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to ramble until I get cut off now.
Well, I think, I've heard about what you're building, and what I think is really interesting, and when Marty and I first talked about this, I think was really notable, is it's a convergence of two stories that I think you are very well putting together. And so when people think, if you want to learn something from somebody who's done it many times over, and a takeaway that I think a lot of people can give, it's the fact that you can complicate, that you're starting with one already big, gnarly startup and tech problem that has its priors, and then go to another. And you're doing it, I think, by sequencing appropriately. I think a lot of pitches, whether they're this complicated in terms of merging two industries or not, they struggle because you don't tell the chronology of like either the user or where the industry is going. And yours being like, at the end of agreements, there is something else. When you first said that to me, it was like an unlock of, oh yeah, at the end of agreements, there is something else. And if we took a more programmatic and technological approach, here's what could be enabled. And so many of your conclusions just become stronger as your pitch goes on. And so kudos to you on kind of.
And don't want to suggest one that I agree with him that it was good, but that if you do agree with that sentiment, I will say that's only at the end result of saying some version of that like a million times until I figured out like people got it. And then where I saw the excitement go up, especially with certain kinds of investors, like they love when like, they don't want to hear about, nobody cares about e-signature. So boring, right? Just sign. It's so easy too, but to code up. But the money movement part, they're like, oh, you're monetizing money movement in a way that no other founder has come in here and done before. And so the biggest red flag that we've gotten from investors has been like, it's a little concerning that this seems too obvious. Like, why hasn't someone done this? So I'm like, hey, that's a pretty good red flag to have. Like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. It should just exist. They're like, yeah, why doesn't it exist? So you got to think like someone smarter than me has already went at this and realized it's not possible or it's not fundamental. And if you are curious, it's just an unlock of like AI, but like, no, you've all probably sent the PDF through OpenAI and asked it questions about the PDF, and it can summarize really well. And generative's good about summarizations, and but there are hallucinations. When we're talking about financial data, you've got to get the comma and period placement on like financial numbers like perfect. You can't like it's like 39,000 or 390,000. I don't know, right? Like that doesn't play anymore. But when you do OCR plus AI, you get near 100%.
Well, I think again, not to she'll-agree.com, it's agree.com. But I think a lot of it again goes to the idea too of what's enabled afterwards on the fintech side is also a big problem in the world. So it's two problems. It's like, hey, our document and e-signature platforms aren't serving us. And this other gnarly thing is something we're all stressed about in the world, whether or not there's a platform that exists. The combination actually creates a better universe for people where compliance, obligations, all of that is well handled. It's super interesting. Marty, I made you do that. You want to come back to this investor sheet as we wrap things up? All right. Well, yeah, round of applause. On the spot. Well done.
I just blacked out for a minute. There, right? Yeah. The lighting, it's like.
And we also, there's like all sorts of psychological tricks we play out. No, I'm just kidding.
It is warmer over there. I was sweating.
Well, this has been amazing. Marty, thank you so much for sharing all of your founder investor insights, for sharing your pitch with the crowd and giving everybody who's listening, watching in the audience today, all those lessons. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Round of applause, too, to all the brave founders that got up and gave their pitch and told us their vision for the future. The Feedback Loop is watchable on YouTube. It is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music has a podcast platform for some reason. There's an RSS feed. If you message me, I'll send you the raw video. No, I won't. Don't do that. But either way, we're online. You're subscribed. You're like. Smash the what other buttons? Comment button. All those things could be super helpful as we're building the feedback loop and doing this to support the New York tech ecosystem, but founders more broadly in trying to change the future and build and try to change the way the Earth spins. So thank you all so much for coming. We do this every week. With that in mind, have a fantastic rest of your Tuesday and hope to see you next week. Thank you very much.